Alright, what's up, YouTube? I just want to do a quick desktop. Actually, it's probably not going to be quick. I'm probably going to go on for like 2 hours. Quick desktop, what's it called? Live commentary. And right here, of course, I'm hitting Super Meat Boy. I ain't the best at the game, but as you can see, I'm kind of perfectionist. Complete 91%. But yeah, this is SSDs versus HDDs. Now I'm just gonna start this off with something I think should be obvious for most people. SSDs are new, and they are basically in beta. Okay. They barely hit the market, I'd say about 4 years ago. That was whenever they hit the market best, I'd say. Of course, they hit the market decent. I mean, they hit the market at a high price, so I'm not sure if you would consider that hitting the market. But they hit the market about 4 years ago. And people have this, I'd say, preconceived notion that SSDs are better than HDDs in every single way possible. And hold on while I plug in my headphones. They're wireless, so yeah. I get this, I'd say, very common misconception that SSDs are better than HDDs in every single way possible. And truth is, they're not. Okay. I'd say the majority of SSDs die faster than HDDs. And if you don't know the physical difference between the HDD and the SSD, an HDD is a disk, and an SSD is flash storage, magnetic versus flash storage, basically. And SSDs die based on how much data is written to them, approximately how much data is written to them. Also has to do with boot time. I mean, how many times they've been booted, how many times they've been read from, but definitely not to the degree that HDDs. I mean, definitely not to the degree that writing from them. I need to stop playing Super Meat Boy while I say this. I can't even talk correctly. HDDs will last longer. That's just a fact. And I mean, it's just a fact. If you're using an HDD in the same way you would use an SSD, assuming you're not throwing your HDD against the wall or shoving it in your asshole, then it will last about as long as an SSD. And if you're treating your HDD right, and you're treating your SSD right, and you're using them equally, the HDD will last longer. Where's my math? Okay, here's my math. Yeah, just ignore this. An HDD can be written to almost infinitely without without destroying itself, basically, without giving out. And whenever it starts to give out, since it is definitely a more developed platform of storage. You'll easily see it. I mean, I have two HDDs in my system. All you have to do on Windows, at least Windows 10, you go to Manage, Disk Management. Windows 8, it's very similar. You wait for it to load up, and it'll tell you if it's healthy. These, both of these are HDDs, and it'll tell you if it's healthy, if it's failing, all because of the smart system. SMART. And let's just put like hard drive. Self-monitoring analysis and reporting technology, often written as SMART, is a monitoring system in computer hard disk drives, HDDs, and SSDs that detects and reports various indicators of drive reliability, and with the intent of enabling the anticipation of hardware failures. Now, SSDs die, and they die rather volatile, in a volatile sense, because SSDs can only be written to so many times before they just give out and die. They just stop. HDDs show signs of slowness, signs of just bad health through the smart system, where SSDs, it's a little harder to track that than just using the smart system. If we go over to disk, or go over to Task Manager and look at disks and how our disk is being used, you'll see all this. I mean, on average, we're I'd say reading and writing about 0.3, 0.2, 0.5, somewhere in that range. We're reading and writing somewhere in that range. Okay. And pull out a calculator. Okay. Now, according to word of mouth, by the way, ignore this. According to word of mouth, a SSD lasts for 2.5 petabytes of writing on average. Okay. And a petabyte is one step above a terabyte, so it's 1,000 terabytes, which is 1,000 gigabytes, which is 1,000 megabytes. So you would think it would last you a pretty long time, and it will. It will. It won't last you as long as an HDD, however. And I make this claim very boldly because I see this all the time. I see SSDs die all the time. Okay, so SSD life span, and I mean, they can last forever, really. I was looking at this article. SSDs can last basically forever. They're great for portable use because if you throw them against a fucking wall, they're more likely to survive than, you know, a disk, which will, I mean, do all kinds of shit if you throw it against a wall. And if you look over here, this article was written a year ago. Okay, so we're going to be generous and we're going to use the highest write whatever, which on here I believe it says more than 2,048 terabytes of data, which they are misrepresenting with the 2048. That's the way Windows counts megabytes and all that. Although realistically it would be 2000. So let's just say 2.5 petabytes. Okay, which would be 2,500 terabytes. Okay. If we look in here, now this is all of the stuff on my boot drive. Okay, this is all the stuff on my boot drive. Let's just say, on average, every single day, we download 0.2 megabytes a second. That would be a lot. And the reason that would be a lot is, well, actually it wouldn't be a lot, it would be actually kind of a decent number. Because, I mean, right now, I'm recording, I have uTorrent open, and one of the biggest things that write and read your system is your operating system. Sorry. Is your operating system. And that's just because of how an operating system works in the first place. And also, if you do a virus scan, that's also going to be very disk intensive. Very disk intensive. Not so write intensive, but still very disk intensive in general. Although mostly it's only reading files instead of writing them. So 0.2. That's not a normal number. So let's just say you're torrenting all day, you're downloading a bunch of movies onto your SSD, and your SSD is your boot drive. That's very important, because SSDs are not optimized to be boot drives. Okay, they work phenomenally as boot drives. I won't lie, I envy it a lot, and I would love for my boot drive to have the performance of an SSD. But as you will see, an SSD is not good for being a boot drive. And you'll see that because if we take 0.2 megabytes a second, there's approximately seconds in a day. There's about 80,000 in a day. It's approximately 86,400. Okay. So multiply this by 80. Oh shit. 0.2 multiplied by 86,400. That's 17,000 megabytes being written per day. Now that could be coming from watching YouTube, that could be coming from loading websites, that could be coming from downloading things through, say, uTorrent, or technically it's called microtorrent, or BitTorrent, or anything. Any kind of download. Okay. Now obviously, most people are not going to reach 17,000 megabytes of downloads a day, but if you're watching 1080p videos on YouTube and you're gonna get kind of surprisingly close to this number. Okay. Now we're going to take this number, 17,000, clear it. Now a petabyte is 2,500 terabytes, which is 250,000 gigabytes, which is 250,000 gigabytes, which a gigabyte is 1,000 gigabytes or 1,000 megabytes is a gigabyte. So if you take this number, I think add another zero, you got 2.5 million megabytes. And just gonna megabytes in a petabyte. It's 1e plus 9. That's not quite sure what that actually equals realistically. I just want to double check my math here, because if I mess this up, okay. Okay, whatever. Let's just assume this is right. I believe it is. Yeah, because you just add 1 0. I just wanted to double check. Okay. Now you take this and you divide it by our number from earlier, which was 17,000. This is how many megabytes per day divided, or this is how many megabytes your SSD can handle, divided by how many megabytes you're downloading per day. That's your lifespan. 147 days of very constant use. Very constant use. Okay. So realistically, your SSD is going to last longer than this. Especially if it's not your boot drive. Okay. Because if it's your boot drive, all your YouTube videos, everything will contribute to this number. Every single thing you watch, every single thing you pull up on the internet, every single thing you download to that drive will contribute to making this number lower. Now, just being generous, I'm going to multiply this by 2 to make it a more realistic number. This is how long your boot drive is going to last if it's an SSD. Approximately a year. And that's assuming you get a rather top-of-the-line SSD that, you know, if you cheap out, then that's just going to make this number lower. Okay? And this is a rather realistic number. Okay, I would say this number would apply to me if my boot drive was an SSD. Now an HDD, however, it's a complete product. Okay, it lasts a long time, and I can tell you that from personal experience, because my boot drive in this system that I'm recording this video on is about 8 years old, maybe older. Okay. If we just look at the release date of Compact, this is what I ripped my boot drive out of. Okay, release date 13th of November. Let's see what year that is. Not sure where we would find that information, but I know for a fact it's older and it's been in use for over 8 years. Okay. Whenever I was 10 years old, this is what I used as my boot drive. Okay. And I've been using it ever since. That's just to give you a decent example of how long an HDD can last if you're not throwing it against a fucking wall like a brick. Okay. And an SSD is not going to last you that long. SSDs are better than HDDs in a theoretical sense. They will be better. They will be boot drives, and they will be capable of numbers tenfold of this that you see in this calculator just in the next 5 to 10 years. Okay? But it's not a complete product. Okay? And like anything that comes onto the market, it's not a complete product. It's not at its full potential. It's not even close. Okay? Oh, and if you're annoyed by the color, here you go. This is a realistic number of how long your boot drive SSD will last. You can accept it, you can deny it, but I just showed you the math, and I showed you I added a generous 500 terabytes to this number right here to add to the lifespan, just because this was written a year ago. And I mean, you saw me do the math. This is a somewhat realistic and very generous number of how long your boot drive SSD will last. Yet people here, I would like to show the specific person. People here like to they like to believe that an SSD is a complete product, and that using it as a boot drive is nothing. This guy states, Chase M 121 states, the lifespan of SSDs are insanely long. The worst one in a benchmark lasted for 700 terabytes of read-write before it failed. We didn't even factor in read, by the way. We did not use that as a factor. We only used write as a factor, which is a big factor, and the biggest factor of SSDs dying is constant writing. And whenever you're watching a video, that is reading and writing at the same time on your hard drive. And yet, I was generous. This guy said 2 petabytes. I put 2.5 petabytes. And I did not factor in reading. Yet he still believes the lifespan of SSDs are insanely long, and that using it as a boot drive is, quote, nothing intensive. No idea what made me think something like that. And I came back and said, it's not going to last as long as an HDD, though, when it comes to being a boot drive. I've had my boot drive for over 6 years, which was handed down for me from my dad, because originally that computer was my father's. An SSD would not last that long by a landslide. This guy, he humors me. He says, that is just blatantly false. And I said, well, you pick your poison. HDDs die from physical damage. SSDs die from file transfer stress. It's really a matter of choice. And this guy chimed in, HDDs also die from wear and tear. Don't forget that. Just like, I would say that's as much as a factor as the reading of an SSD. The wear and tear of an HDD, that's about the same as the reading of an SSD, more or less. Okay. Just for the sake of this conversation and not having to delve into probably like 5 articles to find out the exact answer. Yeah, it's just your HDD is gonna last longer than a boot drive, and this guy's happy with his SSD boot drive, and I would be too. Okay, assuming I'm not putting precious information on it, and I'm happy with the fact that it could die, and I have my information backed up, maybe a RAID 1 array with my SSD. onto an HDD actually, because I mean, if it was onto another SSD, that would just both die, right? And I mean, one would probably die before the other, and then I'd just back everything up. But still, probably be best to back it up to an HDD. And yeah, at least you don't even need a RAID 1 array. You just need to, I mean, back it up every now and then. That's all I'm saying. Okay. And like this guy said, time will tell if it dies. And SSDs have only been on the market for about 4 years. And people who got their SSDs about 4 years ago have already seen them die if they're using it as boot drives. And I can promise you that. If you watch The WAN Show, which is the show hosted by Linus and Luke from Linus Tech Tips, you'll see they had an SSD die. Somebody replied to, oh, it's actually the same guy. I commented on something. Yeah, he's a good sport. I'm not mad at him. I'm a generous person, I guess you could say. I'm not mad at anybody. I'm just kind of frustrated at the fact that some people are pretty ignorant, I think is a safe word to say, towards the facts, which I just laid out on the table and showed everybody in this video. You know. It's pretty cut and dry when it comes to technology. You know. You can only write to an SSD so long. And that's just how it is. Okay. Even if you double this number, say you don't watch videos, it's going to last less than 2 years. Less than 2 years. Compare that to your HDD. Compare that to my HDD that I treat carefully, and I've done a smart analysis on it on another computer, and it only failed in one instance, which was temperature. It runs a little hot, which isn't really a problem if you're like me and you like to do, you know, nifty cooling solutions. But realistically, if you're not taking your HDD anywhere, if it's mounted horizontally and you're not throwing your computer against a brick wall, your HDD is going to last years on years on years on years. At least 4 years. At least. And that's generous to whoever thinks that SSDs are superior in every way, shape, and form. And they are superior right now in read and write speeds. Actually, they're not superior in write speeds. They're actually worse than the HDDs in write speeds. From a ratio perspective, I believe, not from a normal perspective. I believe they're physically better at writing. I'm not quite sure. It just depends on which SSD you're looking at, what you're writing to it, of course, but and also which HDD you're looking at and what RPM it's at. But I mean, and also it doesn't really matter the RPM of your HDD for its lifespan, although it is pretty rumored that it does matter. My boot drive, as you can see over here, this, I believe it is the boot drive that comes with this. Yeah, it's a Western Digital Blue 7200 RPM SATA 2 250 gig HDD, which is a little outdated. SATA 2, it's an old platform, but I mean, look at it. Healthy. I don't believe there's a built-in smart analysis on Windows, but you can see it says healthy. It's healthy, believe me. I did a smart analysis on another machine with this hard drive. It only failed like 2 points in temperature, and it was like 5 out of 5 with everything else. And that's phenomenal. Okay. An SSD would not, no thanks. An SSD would not last half as long as a boot drive. Not even a fourth as long as a boot drive, according to our math. And depending on what you're doing and what the application is. This was a desktop commentary. Was supposed to be a Super Meat Boy commentary, but you know, that did not turn out as well as I had hoped. This was a desktop commentary from Badass. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Peace out.